Welcome to It's Interesting You Say That. Each week, we dive into personal strength, mental resilience, and emotional balance. I'm Jennifer Dillon, a nonprofit leader and resilience expert, and Tyler is a professional coach. We come from different backgrounds and different generations. I'm a bleeding heart liberal. He voted for Trump. But each week, we have a deep, meaningful conversation about the world today. We're glad you're here. I want to know what your definition of karma is. If we have the same definition.
My definition, it might not be right, but it's, I guess, the same concept of consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it can go the reverse too, in a positive way. If you do something good, typically something good happens as a consequence of the thing that you did. Or if you do something bad, typically somewhere downstream, it's going to cause a negative consequence.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of karma also like justice. Like if you do something eventually, it's going to come back at you. Yeah, like you said, good or bad. And, I'm feeling very like there's no justice in this world. So is there really any karma? Because I certainly don't see it played out.
I kind of have like a smart alecky answer.
Yeah.
Maybe like on the world scale, karma is a bit too complex for humans to figure out. But personally, if you feel like there's no karma, it could be because of a negative, like whether things are objectively negative or not, subjectively you're viewing them negatively. So the karma for that is you continue to view things negatively, whether that's even if it's just on your level.
Okay, give me an example. I think I know what you're saying. Give me an example. That's really good.
I guess it's kind of like that corny positive thinking stuff where, like, if I think about, I don't know, my dog pooped in the lawn and keeps pooping in this place where I don't want her to poop. And like, I can look at it like she keeps pooping in this place and keep getting angry. And then every time she does it, I'm just going to get angry. And then that anger that immediate sense of anger also causes like downstream anger. Like now past the moment she's pooped, I'm still angry. And now I'm thinking she's going to poop tomorrow. And now I'm angry about that. And it's like this one instance of how I'm viewing it continues to produce this negative instance. She doesn't know, honestly. I haven't trained her. That's honest. And so I can be like, okay, well, maybe I can train her. Maybe I can do this. It's not her fault. And so now I'm not mad, so mad about her pooping. And that thought process might prompt me to do something more positive, like train her so the actual event stops in the future. So that would be like positive karma.
I see. So it's kind of like a mindset that you put yourself into that says, I'm going to take the wrong thing that happened and turn it into a lesson or turn it into something good that will happen.
I'm trying to turn it into anything that will not keep producing a negative outcome or a negative internal state for me. So like, I guess take like Gaza or take Trump's inauguration. I voted for Trump, but I know a lot of people didn't. So take his inauguration. Like my parents are pretty mad, but I mean, what do you do with that? Like it's negative to someone who thinks it's negative, but it's almost like above our playing field. Like if you voted, that's what you could do. It's above our playing field. So thinking negatively about it is only going to continue to produce negative internal feelings about it moving forward, where you could think, I don't know what you could think, because when things make you mad, they make you mad, but you could try to turn it into something where like, that's above my pay grade. Like, what can I do? And just focus on that. So like maybe taking on karma that isn't necessarily yours is almost like a collective karma. And the only thing you can really do is like, it might feel like a drop in the bucket, but you can address your karma and turn that positive. And hopefully if enough people do that, collective karma turns positive as well. But I think at the state that we're in right now, there's a lot of negative karma and it's not up to the individual to like turn the ship around.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I want to look up the actual definition of karma, because I think you're really onto something about the bigger picture around karma, rather than that feeling of, well, you did something wrong, so you should have some kind of consequence to it. And because there's no consequence, there's no justice in the world. And if there's no justice, then what is karma, right?
I got it pulled up.
Okay.
The sum of a person's actions in this and previous states of existence, viewed as deciding their fate in future existences. And then the informal definition, destiny or fate following as effect from cause.
See, I'm looking at it more like that second definition. Like you do something, you get a consequence for it. And, we raise kids like that, right? Or like your dog, if you do something, there's a consequence to them or there's a consequence to you. If there's a consequence to them, to the dog, when you're training it, then it might behave differently. The idea to me of karma being this multi-lifetime system. And then, like you talked about, it's also about all of us together. We have a collective karma, I think, right? And that's where you said it can get very complex because we don't really know the full-on version of what this karma is. And it's very interesting. I was having a conversation this morning with a friend of mine about the inauguration, and he said that, this is who we are. People are like, oh, Trump is an aberration, and he's like a cancer on us and things like that. And it's like, well, no, this is kind of who we are. This is our collective karma coming back at us because of some of the things that we've put into the stream. Now, if you like Trump, then you're feeling like this is positive karma. Finally, we're getting to have the things that we thought we should have. And if you're against Trump, then you're seeing it like this is negative karma. Finally, all of our bad deeds are coming back to haunt us or whatever. And I think, we talked about this last week about finding some kind of middle ground or some way to rise above both of them. And I feel like the lessons of karma, first of all, I don't know if I believe in karma. And as someone who, grew up not with Hinduism, but with Sikhism, where, but in the Indian tradition is really where karma comes from, like this, because there's so much. I mean, if you go to India, have you ever been to India?
Okay.
It is full of misery. I'm sorry for Indians who love India, but every time I've gone to India, I mean, there's a lot of beauty. There's a lot of good. There's really good people. There's incredible strength. There's lots of really great things about India. But like any big, large country, there is so much suffering and it's in your face all the time. And so I feel like karma is a way to make ourselves feel better about the suffering of the world and to say, well, eventually it'll all come around and the person who, the meek will inherit the earth. And so everything will be okay. And I feel like what we should be doing, or maybe not should, but the way that I'm trying to look at this right now is, what can we learn? What can we learn about ourselves with the fact that half of us seek a karma that goes one way and the other half seek a karma that goes another way? What does that say about us as people just sharing this planet? And that's a kind of a karmic statement in itself, that I see the world as a place where we're all sharing the planet, not a place where we're all fighting for, can I have more resources than you? So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, how can we, all of us, rise to a different place where we can accept what is happening and find peace in what is happening? So this could have gone a completely different way. And right now, Kamala Harris could be being sworn in and half the country would be really upset about it. So what do you think about that? And where would you put your mindset if you were to try to rise above the concept of karma?
That's really difficult, because I think of karma in the same way as almost good and bad. Like, to me, karma almost is like one word for good and bad. It's like the holistic version of good and bad. And so you can take that whatever way you want. You can take karma and say it's good. You can take karma and say it's bad. You can have a bad action and do something bad, get something bad, do something good, get something good. And I think if I was to rise above good and bad and karma, then it's something just like to accept. Because my first answer was almost So do good, like do the best you can, like, you know, or if there isn't anything, why not aim for the best? But then I think that kind of puts you just back at square one, and you can't just do that because there also has to be bad. They're just kind of like last week we were talking about the dopamine, and we were talking about my relationship and how we can have these good weeks, but then we always have to have these bad weeks. And I really thought about that, and what I've been doing to kind of combat that from that conversation was doing more chores. So, and I know that sounds kind of, I know it's like, why is that the answer? Is because I realized I don't really love doing chores, and I think that's the point. Like, it's something that I don't want to do. I don't want to have that argument with my wife, or sometimes I don't always want to play with my kids, but like almost like forcing myself to do the things that I don't want to allows me to enjoy the things that are good when they come. And then there's not like this dip because I'm proactively taking on the things that I don't want to, or, the bad things or the negative emotions. And I'm not saying like playing with my kids brings negative emotions. It actually brings like great emotions to me and great emotions to them. And it relieves my wife when she's trying to cook dinner, and when, instead of like, oh, when's dinner ready? Like, we're off running in the house. But after a long day and I'm in a bad mood, or I had a hard call, like the first thing I want to do is typically not like run around and wrestle with the kids. But instead of thinking that way, it's like, okay, let me take the next step. And it's not something I want to do. It's something I'm kind of dreading to do, but it's the right thing to do. It's not going to give me that immediate relief, but on a bigger picture, it's going to have a better benefit.
So what you're saying is that, you get good and bad, and you're choosing some of the bad in order to promote more of the good. So that, like that seesaw we talked about with dopamine. So if you know that there's good and bad, so let's say that, let's think about that Zen image, where it's like half white, half black, that existence has in it good and bad moments. And what you can do is choose to live through the bad, do the things that you need to do, and then experience that fully, so that when the good stuff happens, you also experience that fully. Is that a way of describing it?
Yeah, kind of like the yin yang.
Mm-hmm. The yin and yang. Thank you. That's what I was referring to.
Even in the black space, there's that little bit of white, or the little bit of light, or even in the white space, there's that little bit of black. And like cleaning the cars, for me, it's mostly kind of, it's a little negative. Like, and I think most of the negative comes before I start, but that little bit of light in it, or the little bit of good, is that it's clean.
Mm-hmm.
Or the little bit of light is like, I get some time to just kind of do something kind of mindless, and just like almost like a meditation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the more you optimize for the good, the more you also have to create space for the bad. Like, the more money you want to make, the harder you're going to have to work, unless you're born rich. But if you're born rich, then there's also going to be a negative with that. And I think for me, the most important part is to try to keep some sort of awareness in the good moments and the bad moments, that there's something good or bad here, and something's going to balance it out. I just have to look for it. And then taking it a step from there, if I'm careful and I'm diligent, then I can start to choose what that is. I can choose the bad, I can choose the good for myself, and I can pick my poisons. Okay. I can pick my battles instead of having them happen to me.
But bad things can happen to you too without your consent. Something terrible could happen. You could, your house could catch on fire, or, like what's happening in LA, or, an accident, a car accident, just, how do you want to say, just bad things can happen that are not under your control. And how do you then put that in the context of that bad and good balance that you're trying to maintain? Or that, I almost see it as like you're trying to live through the bad without getting too attached to the bad. That makes sense. Like, okay, I got to clean the car. I don't like that. But I'm not going to get too attached to the emotion of, I don't like this.
But it's something that gives me a good benefit and I can enjoy doing it, if that makes sense. It's not like going out to eat ice cream. Like you go out to eat ice cream and then maybe you gain weight, or like maybe you have, a brain freeze. But well, let me ask, I know this is very blunt, but what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you
Cool.
out of your like immediate control?
Uh, there's a lot. Wow, that's a hard one. I would say abusive situations that I've been in. I was sexually abused when I was 14, and that was very bad. And abusive situations when I was younger. Losing, just finding out that I couldn't have children was very difficult. None of those experiences were things that in that moment, like I didn't understand the full impact of those terrible things that were happening until later. It's like the evil seed kind of thing. The bad seed got planted and then it grew in me over time, so that I realized and saw those things for what they were later. Because in the moment that all those things were happening, I did not feel the impact of what those things meant in my life. And I feel like that's very common. And I think that, if we go back to looking at things on a global scale, I think that happens also to humanity. We don't quite, you can look at climate change. We don't realize what the impact of these negative things are until they bloom and grow like these kind of dark tentacles, kind of coming out and revealing themselves. And I think one thing that I do that I think has been helpful for me is I try to detach myself from, not from feeling those things, but from reliving the experiences of them, and try to see them from a more intellectual perspective, giving myself some distance to see it as these things happen, these things are happening, but don't just focus on that thing. Focus on how you can learn from it, how you can make it smaller in your life and grow other things around it. So it's like, the garden metaphor. So I think, like right now, I think that we have planted a very dark seed in our world. And I know other people see this differently, but I feel like this dark seed is going to permeate every part of our lives. Slowly, we're going to see things change in a way that's negative. Now, I'm not going to live like that. I'm not going to live saying, well, we all know that people are going to suffer, and probably people that are not me are going to really suffer, but I will suffer watching the suffering. I don't like that feeling that I have, that I see other people are going to suffer. They are people like me. I need to take that feeling and that energy and that perspective and not allow it to destroy me, because I think for a lot of people, they are extremely upset right now, and take that and allow it to energize me, to make me feel like, what can I do? And I think that's where the karma part comes in, because you want the universe, you want the God in the machine, the deus ex machina, to rise up and to make something happen so that suffering doesn't happen. This is something I feel is really important. I feel like as human beings, we have to readjust how we experience negative things. And the desire for justice, the desire for karma to play out, cannot be something that makes us weaker, because, not being fulfilled, not having that karma play out the way that we think it should, like you do something wrong, there is a justice system that makes sure that you get stop. And I think that's where I connect with what you're saying about I'm going to do something now to change my karma tomorrow. And that might be personal. I'm going to say I'm going to do something to make a change. And that, we've talked about this before. What do? Some people march, some people write letters, some people give money, some people talk things out with other people and change people's minds. Some people give comfort and aid. That is the beauty of the world, is how do we then create our personal karmas by doing what we think is the right thing to do. And then how do we experience a global karma based on all the individual acts that we're doing? And I think people think that my little thing, like I'm going to, be nice to the immigrant who, walks around and cleans the street in my neighborhood, and really hope to have that she is protected. How is that karma going to play out for myself and for her? And hopefully it's a positive karma. And then for other people to be thinking, how is my desire to have that person swept off the street and taken back to a country where she maybe felt, she probably felt threatened and didn't have a quality of life. What is that karma? And we are building a collective global karma around these little situations that happen every day. And
that sounds like that's kind of like the light in the dark.
mm-hmm.
It sounds like around you there is this, well, maybe around everybody, but for you specifically, there's just a lot of bad things happening. There's just like objectively a lot of negative things happening.
Mm-hmm.
But you're doing what you can, and maybe that just looks like that white little dot in the yin and the, I don't know which one is which, but like it's the yin and the yang. It's the small part of the big part.
Right.
And it feels, well, I can't speak for you, but I would imagine like it feels overwhelming. It feels like maybe this is not enough. How can this one thing take over this whole thing?
Right.
But there's the other half too. There's the light side. And depending on where you are, you just might not be in the light side. And that, I don't know how else to say it, but it sucks when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my hope is that maybe everyone can experience the good. But another realistic part of me thinks like, we were talking about this in another episode where like sometimes like you sacrifice your life. Like you said, like maybe I do something today that makes tomorrow better, but like sometimes it's like maybe I do something in this lifetime that makes someone else's lifetime better, which is like a form of, well, it's sacrifice. And
Yeah.
it's not fun. I think I'm coming out of an end, like a trajectory in my own lineage where I kind of get the baton and I get to make a leap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to solve all the problems, but for instance, like sexual abuse. So in my childhood, sexual abuse, like that's been a common theme forever in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a very common theme for a lot of people. And honestly, one of the things that helped me get over that was, and then, trigger warning for anybody listening, you might lower the volume or pause it, skip ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought this thought one day, like rape happens. It's a part of society. It's a real thing. It happens, and it's been happening for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I had to experience it. But it happens. It's here. It will be here. It'll probably be here for a while.
Yeah.
But looking at it objectively as something that happens allowed me to take my subjectively look at it like, okay, like it's just something that happens. And like, if I do what I can, hopefully like my kids won't have to go through that.
Yeah.
Their kids won't have to go through that. And not just because like, some random chance something happens, but like you have that awareness, you have those tools, you have that confidence, so that you are not someone who is, I guess for lack of a better term, a better this is going to sound bad, but like better pray.
Yeah.
Those are actual skills that I've had to learn, that I can instill in my kids so they have a lesser chance of something like that happening to them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's what you do. I taught my son as well that these are the things that you watch out for. I like the metaphor of, you know, rape happens, or it's not a metaphor. I mean, just like a fact that rape happens, and that you don't think about it in terms of what did I do wrong? That it's almost like, you know, you're on this playing field and there's a bunch of holes in the field and you don't know where the holes are and you just happen to be the person who fell into the hole. That's not your fault. And I think that's one of the big, it's the first message. We just released this resilience blueprint. And the first message that we send to people is it's not your fault. There are things that happen, which is very counter to the idea of karma. Oh, I was, so when I was 14, so therefore it must be a karmic thing. I must have done something really bad in my past life to deserve having that done to me. And that I don't believe in. I just don't. But that in this life, you are here to experience what it feels like, what the emotion is, to just be somebody who gives yourself a rounder experience of life in general. And that every time, like going through right now, what I feel like, I'm going through, which is we're descending into dictatorship and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, I always wondered how people felt in Germany in 1939, for example, right? So now I know, right? And people and other people say, well, that's not right. This is the dawn of a new age. And so we are all having our own personal experiences of things. And you're then teaching yourself how to get out of that, to survive that. I mean, isn't that what resilience is? That you find a pathway that allows you to rise up over that situation, live through it, process it, even allow it to become a part of your identity, part of who you are, that I am not that I am a victim, but I'm somebody who now has a concept of what it feels like so that I can now do something with that information and hopefully you do something good. And that to me makes more sense of what karma is than it's just a cycle of you did something shitty to somebody, so now you're going to get something shitty happening back to you. I can, decide to do something good with this stuff, or I can do something else with it. And then you define what's good, and what's good may be setting up karma for something else that maybe is good for you later or good for somebody else, or maybe not.
I agree with, like, it's not your fault or it's not my fault. But the way I see karma playing in is it's like akin to the idea of generational trauma. And so, no, it's not my particular fault, but I am a link in a very long chain of events. And so even though it's not my fault, it is my responsibility. And that's a responsibility that I didn't have to choose to take on. It's one that I chose to take on. So now that I have kids, I feel like it's my responsibility. Or now that I coach people who go through very similar things, I feel like it's my responsibility, not to like prevent it, like I can prevent it, but like let's work through it. What do you need to do? What do you need to do to work through it? But I think that's kind of on the cusp of, like we were talking, there's personal karma and then there's collective karma. And in this very specific circumstance for me, I have enough awareness, not just about my personal circumstances, but my parents' circumstances, my grandparents' circumstances, my family circumstances, to understand where I came in that chain of events. Mm-hmm. And so it's not my fault. I'm not saying it's their fault or whoever's. I'm not saying anybody's at fault, right. But the chain of events, the ledger has the numbers, it has the receipts. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is where I am. There's holes on the field, and if you play the numbers, someone's going to fall in the hole.
Yeah.
But from there, I can come at it from, okay, it's not my fault. Maybe there's nothing I can do to change that. But moving forward, I can make sure that at least within this very small, slim piece of the world, or this awareness that I have, this thing no longer exists. And so it's almost like taking on responsibility for things that aren't your fault or you had no control over. But now that you do, and now that you can see it, it's like you're trying to take on a little bit of the collective karma.
Yeah, that's very good, because what you're saying is you took that, that experience that you went through, and you're using it for some reason, for some purpose. And your part of what that purpose is actually breaking cycles, breaking generational cycles, trauma. And that's I mean, I think that's what we're talking about, is that you're not stuck with your karma as a negative thing. You are turning your experiences into a new creation. So what are you going to do with that experience that you had, and how can you recreate it, reshape it into something really valuable? And I think both of us are in the process of turning our negative experiences in life into what we hope is something positive. And we don't have to even do it to say, well, I want to save the world. It's just, I'm a creator. I'm a creative person. All of us are creators, whether we understand it or not. And I am, every second of my life, I'm creating something. And if I'm aware that part of the materials that I'm using to create something are negative experiences, or things that I experience as painful, difficult, tragic, horrible, inconceivable, unthinkable, and then I have these materials now to work with. And that's that objectivity that you're talking about, being able to put it into a tray and saying, here's the materials I have to work with. What can I do with this? And I feel like that's very true. And I feel like that's a very powerful way to exist, because I think most of us feel buried by those experiences, those feelings, those unprocessed feelings.
I think that's realistic, because in part of my own story, like no matter what negative things happened to me, there were also just enough good things so that I was able to kind of get out of the swamp. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get my footing. I was able to, I did a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't so great, but eventually when I did get my footing, like the string wasn't broke, or like my parents, they did just enough so that like they held on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but, and I realized not just the negative karma in what happened to me and where I fall in that chain of events, but like the positive ones too. And the positive ones allowed me to just like kind of just like get over the hump, get my life together, figure everything out. And I feel like now that I'm in a decent place, so like being fortunate enough for those events to happen and come out the other side, realizing that more happens to people and more happens to people that have less.
Yeah.
And so there's almost like pain in that. Like, thank God I got out of it, but like, how is that person going to get out of it when they went through 2, 3, 4 times as much and they had 5, 10, 15 times as less? And the only way that I've been able to really kind of like put a Band-Aid on my personal pain, even though it's not my pain, is say, okay, like what, like, how much can I take on? I've figured out my stuff to the extent that I can carry on, and like who else or what else can I do? Like what responsibility can I take? What weight can I carry? And I guess that's kind of like cleaning the car. Like,
Yeah.
like what can I do? Like it's not going to be fun, but it's going to have a greater benefit. It's going to have some sort of good outcome. And so even though I might not want to do it all the time, it's the thing that allows me to feel content with the positive things that I do have in my life. I have to go find some work to do. I have to go find some weight to carry because like I have a good life.
You and I share that. I that's why you do so much of your work for free, and you give away so much. You're there. you don't charge a lot for what you do. And that's why I do Bounce Back Generation, the nonprofit. There's an urgency I feel that to give what I have. Like, how lucky was I in so many ways? And just within my own family, I look at what I escaped so much of the long-term, detrimental effects of some of the things that we went through when we were kids. And so I feel this huge sense of responsibility, not in a negative way, in a really positive way. Like, I have this basket of bounty. Who can I give it to? And so I think, and that comes from being able to, and I think you're good at this too, being able to see what we have, being grateful, having an eye always to be grateful for the things that we do have in the middle of, recognizing that there are things that are not going our way or things we don't like, being extremely grateful for everything. I took a walk this morning and I was like, oh, I don't want to know what's going on in the news and all that. And it's a beautiful day here in Northern California. There's no fires, knock on wood. The sun is shining. We were talking about Finding Nemo. It's one of my favorite sayings. Because I saw that movie so many times. When Nemo is in the fish tank in the dentist's office and they're trying to, escape, and it's like, and they get up and the tank is clean. They're trying to make the tank dirty so they can, escape. And they wake up and it's like, wake up, the sun is shining, the tank is clean, like, everything is great. And I always say that in my head, the sun is shining, the tank is clean, everything is great. And it's true. And I think in the middle of, if we can practice doing that, it gives us power. It's not that it's like, oh, I'm just not seeing all the bad things that are happening, or I have to just go in my room and, bed rot for 3 days because it's such a bad thing. Always looking for where is the good in this gives me personal power and gets me up and ready to do whatever it is that makes me feel good. But whatever I can make happen. But one thing I want to say to you before I let you break in, just how funny that you were saying about playing with the kids. I remember a few years ago talking with some mom friends of mine who are also mothers, not just, mom friends, friends of mine who are also mothers. And I don't know, somebody just admitted, like, I couldn't stand playing with my kids. And all of us were like, oh my God, it was such a torture. It's like sitting on the ground. Yes. Oh, that's so cute. Da, da, da. Like, for a minute, it's fine. But the 20, and then we started talking about how, like, just designing our day, like how to figure out the day. So we weren't just standing there going, oh my God, I'm so bored. Anyway, so it's very funny. So I think it's a very common thing that people have.
It's hard. It's hard to play with kids.
It is.
Because they're not, because they don't know how to play most of the time. They don't know all the rules or all the games. And my wife was just telling me the other day, like that's one of the things that she kind of dreads too. Like I just don't always know how to play with them. Mm-hmm. But what she's really, really great at is like managing their emotions, like on a day-to-day basis. Like, they're crying, they're tantrums, they're mad because they can't get their shoe on. Like, I don't know how she does it because my tolerance for it is not as high, but she can just weather those storms all day. But for me, getting into the playing, we're not sitting down, we're not playing, like, let's cook or let's draw. And my kids aren't those type of kids anyways. They don't sit down for long anyway. So, I get up, I kind of shove one, I kind of shove the other, I kind of pick one up, I throw them on the couch, and next thing you know, we're running through all the houses, we're messing everything up, we're wrestling, and almost having to find a way that makes it fun for me too.
Yeah. Well, it's good because I would imagine that your wife does a lot of the emotional regulation in terms of talking things out and check in with your feelings. And people don't often realize, I think, that in order to manage your emotions, you have to move your body. This is the Bessel van der Kolk with the body keeps a score. He has been teaching on this for years. Every couple of months he does a new teaching just to try to remind people that it's that your emotions are also contained in your body. They're not just like sit down on a couch, lie down on a couch and be very Freudian and talk it out. That you need to move, you need to release all that fight or flight, all those hormones and the everything firing off in your body. But that's a very important component, not just for your kids, but we have to remember that. You need to go and move your body. You're not going to feel better unless you can find a way to move as a way to release all of those emotions and tension.
That is something else that I realized or maybe remembered as from that conversation. I think it might have been last week or 2 weeks, but I don't know why that conversation just stuck in my head the next 2 weeks. And I remember being in the office trying to do some work that didn't really need to be done. But I hit this threshold where I just like couldn't get any work done. I'm just sitting at the desk, kind of like, don't know what to do, but I feel like I have to do it. And I remember just like putting my stuff down and going in to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And after just like maybe even just like 5 minutes, the answer just popped up.
Right.
And I guess it's kind of like that same thing that we're talking about. In a way, it's kind of related to karma for me. It's like you have to take on those things that you don't always want to take on to get back to the good. And working out is one of those things for me. Like when I'm in the rhythm, it's great. I'm in the rhythm. I'm in my routine. But then when I stop for a couple of days or a week, it's again like trying to jump in that pool. Like
Yeah.
you just don't want to. But as soon as you do, like everything is great. Everything's normal.
Yeah, I think there are a few basics that everybody needs to follow if you want to maintain a positive, happy, perspective on life. You've got to move your body. You've got to create some routines for yourself, and you have to talk to yourself. You have to talk positively to yourself. And then I would say the fourth thing is you have to stop and allow your mind to slow down and rest. So that's meditation. So move your body. Now I forget the routines. Talk to yourself and let your mind and meditate. I think if people do those four things, and I would say for the people that are feeling like I am about like, the world is just not going the way that I would like it to right now, start by doing those four things, because you can't save yourself or the world if you're feeling crappy. And that's what I think that's kind of like number one thing that Bounce Back Generation tries to do, is help people just find a way to feel good. Then you can address like the past traumas, and you can think about your scary future, and you can deal with the things that aren't working in your life today. But you need to feel some sense of peace and joy in order to get to the place to do that. So start with trying to feel good in a positive way. And what I mean by positive is, this is one of my favorite sayings from our building blocks, is find a coping skill that makes you feel good today and just as good or better tomorrow. Because we'll look for things that make us feel great right now, feeling good. And then tomorrow you're like, oh my God, what did I do?
Well, that's why I clean the cars and do the laundry.
Mm-hmm. That's the, I hope I'm saying this right, but I think it's from the idea that we are householders. And with that, and I'm reaching in my memory for this, but I think it's a Hindu or a Buddhist or some kind of Eastern kind of philosophy that while everything is happening, you're washing the dishes, you're cleaning the car, you're changing the diapers, you're watering the garden, you just keep going, and you do these householder things, because that's in the end what we're responsible for. You take your shower, whatever it is. And everything will be okay. It won't, but it'll be okay for now.
It'll be worse if you don't wash the dishes.
Yeah, that's right. You'll feel worse if you wake up and you're feeling shitty and you also got. That's the thing. I never go to bed without washing the dishes because the worst thing you want to do is wake up in the morning after like you've gone to a party or whatever and you got dirty dishes and you just be like, oh, my whole life sucks. I can't do anything, you know. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll subscribe for weekly podcasts about building personal strength, mental resilience, and emotional balance. You can also find free tools, resources, and quizzes at bbgtv.org. That's bbgtv.org.